This was an unbelievable ass kicking by Caitlin Clark.
She is the difference maker. She is the needle mover. She is the face of basketball right now.
Caitlin Clark made a comeback. WNBA ratings collapsed by over 50% in just 5 games. The league was hemorrhaging viewers, sponsors were getting nervous, and casual fans were tuning out faster than you could say women's basketball. Then Caitlin Clark stepped back on the court and delivered 38 seconds that changed everything. What you're about to see isn't just highlights from a basketball game. This is the moment one player single-handedly rescued an entire league from irrelevance.
The second-year players clearing out that side of the floor, shooting on Stewie, and then watch the reaction with one another.
We're talking about a sequence so electric that it left opposing players laughing in disbelief, coaches clapping for the wrong team, and haters scrambling for conspiracy theories. Let's set the stage because this wasn't just any comeback story. When Caitlin Clark went down with injury, the WNBA got its first brutal reality check about what life without their golden goose actually looked like. The Indiana Fever stumbled to a pathetic 2-3 record without her. But that wasn't even the worst part. The team that had captivated millions with their fast-paced, exciting style suddenly looked like they were playing basketball underwater. Every possession felt sluggish, every play predictable, and fans who had fallen in love with Fever basketball were left watching a completely different sport. The magic was gone. Here's where it gets really ugly for the league. Those casual fans who had discovered women's basketball through Clark, they vanished overnight. We're talking about a complete viewership meltdown that exposed just how dependent the WNBA had become on one player. Games that should have drawn decent audiences were pulling numbers that made executives break out in cold sweats. Social media engagement plummeted, highlight reels disappeared, and suddenly everyone realized the uncomfortable truth nobody wanted to admit. Without Clark, the product just wasn't compelling enough to hold attention. The Emperor had no clothes, and the whole world could see it. When Clark was finally cleared to return, the basketball gods couldn't have scripted a more perfect scenario.
That is what I like to call Fever basketball.
She wasn't coming back against some bottom-feeder team where she could ease back into things. No, she was facing the undefeated New York Liberty, the same team that had beaten Indiana in her last game before the injury. This was prime time, national television, with millions of eyes watching to see if the magic was real or just a fluke. The pressure was suffocating. The stakes couldn't have been higher, and everyone had the same burning question. Could one player really carry an entire league on her back?
Yup, I'm gonna say it. Caitlin Clark is the best basketball player in the world. She's the best basketball player that I have ever seen.
Then it happened. The sequence that sports analysts are already calling one of the greatest individual performances in basketball history. Clark stepped up and absolutely torched the Liberty defense with 3 consecutive logo bombs in just 38 seconds. We're not talking about regular three-pointers here. These were shots from another area code that had no business going in. Each one was more audacious than the last, each swish sending the crowd into absolute hysteria. The momentum shifted so violently that you could literally feel the energy change through your TV screen. This wasn't just scoring. This was a statement that shook the entire basketball world. By halftime, Clark had already put up 25 points while playing limited minutes, and she was just getting started. The final stat line read like something from a video game. 32 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 blocks. That combination had never been achieved in WNBA history, making her the first and only player to record those numbers in a single game. But here's the kicker. She did it in her first game back from injury, against the league's best team. Most players would be happy to knock off the rust and contribute. Clark decided to rewrite the record books instead. That's superstar mentality. Quick question for everyone watching. What do you think the viewership numbers were for this historic performance? I'm predicting this game hit over 3 million viewers, possibly peaking near 4 million. Drop your guess in the comments, and let's see who gets closest when the official numbers drop. What happened next perfectly captured why this performance transcended normal basketball. After Clark hit a nasty step-back 3 over former MVP Breanna Stewart, something magical occurred. Stewart, one of the toughest competitors in the game, couldn't help but smile and laugh at what she'd just witnessed. Even better, the Liberty's head coach was caught on camera, clapping and grinning, like she was watching her own player. Of course, the moment Clark dominated the headlines, the professional haters came crawling out of their caves with the most ridiculous takes imaginable. Some clowns were actually claiming the game was scripted, like the WNBA was running some elaborate WWE-style performance just for Clark. Others were dissecting her body language frame by frame, desperately searching for something to criticize about a player who had just dropped 32 and 9. When you're reduced to analyzing facial expressions and inventing conspiracy theories, you've basically admitted defeat. The desperation was palpable, and honestly, it just made Clark's performance look even more impressive. Magic Johnson wants to find a superstar, someone who can go on the road and sell out buildings, and that's exactly what Clark brings to every arena. She's not just moving the needle for Indiana, she's single-handedly carrying the entire league's cultural relevance. Before Clark, how many casual sports fans could name 3 WNBA players? Now she's got people who've never watched women's basketball becoming overnight experts in buying jerseys. That's not just athletic talent, that's star power that transcends sports. The WNBA struck gold, and everyone from players to executives better recognize what they've got before it's too late. Let's talk numbers, because they don't lie. Clark's return game likely pulled in over 3 million viewers, making it one of the most watched WNBA games in history. But the economic impact goes way deeper than TV ratings. Arena attendance jumps by 15,000 when she's playing, merchandise sales explode, and suddenly corporate sponsors are throwing money at a league they ignored for decades. The Indiana Fever went from playing in half-empty gyms to selling out arenas nationwide. Hotel bookings surge in whatever city she's visiting. Local restaurants see massive increases in game day traffic, and ticket prices skyrocket. One player is literally generating millions in economic activity wherever she goes. What's even more impressive is how Clark's return instantly elevated her teammates' performance. Kelsey Mitchell went from shooting 22% to being plus 21 on the night. Nalissa Smith started making plays she couldn't dream of without Clark's gravity pulling defenders. Even role players like Lexi Hall looked like completely different athletes with proper floor spacing and ball movement. This isn't just individual brilliance, it's leadership that makes everyone around you better. The Fever weren't just getting their best player back, they were getting their identity back. That's the mark of a true floor general who understands that basketball is ultimately a team sport. From a pure basketball perspective, what Clark did was technically masterful. Those 3 logo bombs weren't lucky shots, they were perfectly executed plays that showcased elite footwork, release mechanics, and court vision. The step-back 3 over Stewart required incredible balance and confidence to pull off against a former MVP. Her 9 assists showed she wasn't just hunting for stats. She was running the offense and finding open teammates whenever the double teams came. The 8 rebounds proved she was doing dirty work on both ends. And those 2 blocks demonstrated defensive awareness that critics love to ignore. This was a complete basketball performance. The moment those 3 consecutive threes went in, social media absolutely exploded in ways the WNBA had never seen before. Clark's highlights were trending on every platform, with clips racking up millions of views within hours. ESPN analysts were comparing her performance to legendary NBA moments, and even male NBA players were giving her props on Twitter. The viral clips weren't just reaching basketball fans. They were crossing over into mainstream pop culture territory. TikTok compilations, Instagram Reels, and YouTube highlights were introducing Clark to audiences who had never watched women's basketball. That's the kind of crossover appeal that changes entire sports. Think about the psychological pressure Clark was facing in this return game. 5 games of watching her team struggle without her, endless media speculation about whether she'd lost a step, and facing the undefeated team that had beaten them in her last game. Lesser players would have played it safe, tried to ease back into things gradually. Instead, Clark came out firing from logo range like she had something to prove to the entire basketball world. That's champion mentality, the kind of competitive fire that separates superstars from regular players. She didn't just want to contribute, she wanted to dominate and send a message. Of course, we can't ignore the elephant in the room regarding the officiating in this game. Breanna Stewart shot 14 free throws, many on questionable calls that had fans and analysts scratching their heads. There was that phantom foul on Lexi Hall that made 0 sense, and several other calls that seemed designed to keep the liberty in the game. But here's what made Clark's performance even more impressive. She dominated despite the whistle not going her way. She didn't let bad calls affect her rhythm or confidence. True superstars rise above the noise and let their play do the talking. This single game might be remembered as the moment Clark officially became the face of women's basketball. We're talking about a performance that will be referenced for decades, the kind of signature moment that defines careers. When future analysts discuss Clark's impact on the WNBA, they'll point to this return game as proof of her superstar status. The 38-second sequence will be in highlight reels forever, and those 3 consecutive logo bombs will be replayed until the end of time. This wasn't just a great game, it was a defining moment that separates good players from legends who changed the entire trajectory of their sports. So, there you have it. 38 seconds that reminded everyone why Caitlin Clark isn't just the future of women's basketball. She's the present. One performance that saved ratings, silenced critics, and proved that sometimes one player really can carry an entire league. The question now is whether the WNBA will build around this momentum or find a way to mess it up. If you want to see more breakdowns of Clark's dominance and the league's response, make sure you're subscribed, because we're just getting started. Final disclaimer. Remember, this isn't professional sports analysis, just passionate fan commentary. Always consult qualified experts for serious basketball insights and analysis.
Number one of the greatest single half performances I've ever seen
And for Caitlin
in
Clark
basketball.
and Fever fans,
I've
every
fully
breakdown in
watched
this video.
all of Magic, all of Bird, all of Chuck.
She just dropped a
all
major
of
update
Jordan,
on her injury, and
Ewing,
let's just say
Olajuwon,
the comeback is
all
near.
of them. It was one of the best halves. It was in the top 5 best offensive
Getting back up
halves
and
of
jogging onto the
basketball
court.
I've ever seen.
What Caitlin Clark just did in her first
And
game
all
back
things
from
WNBA.
Okay, back to Caitlin Clark's comeback. It's going to be
Even her
way
opponents
bigger
on the
than
court
people think,
in
because
absolute
everything
awe.
and the stakes,
Couldn't
it
have
changed
been higher.
everything for her, for the Fever, and for the entire WNBA. And then there's the wild
Caitlin
part.
gave us a
The
performance
mystery
for the
around how
ages
she
that
even
left
got
no
injured in
doubt
the first
about who's
place
in charge
is
of the
stirring up
WNBA,
some
followed
serious
by a
conspiracies.
dominant performance
And
against
honestly,
the Chicago Sky.
I hope they're true, because if they are, we're about. I'll dive into the on-court what she
issues
told
in
the
just a
media,
moment.
the tone shift from the Fever, and the chaos in the league
fact,
while she's been
there was a
gone.
38
the stage is official that showed exactly
Records are
why
about to fall,
she
the
and
narratives
Caitlin
are
missed
already
any
shattering.
significant time.
Let's break it all
the league
down.
was going to
But-
feel it. And sure enough, we started
Swagger.
seeing the
And
cracks
most
early,
importantly,
a ratings
I
record.
can
Understand
personally
and subscribe
confirm
for more
the
Fever updates.
pronounced
With the
change.
First,
spotlight
let's
on her.
quickly rewind
The
to
league
Fever
on
on
the
the
Fever
ropes.
games
Obviously,
without
She delivered
Clark.
the
game.
goods
A
only
week
the way
ago,
she
I bought
can.
4 tickets on
Even
StubHub.
Liberty
Peaking at
players
3.2
and
million
coach
viewers
high
is
quality
crazy
action.
for the WNBA,
To the
even for the
Fever
Fever.
Mystics game in
So
Baltimore.
this year's peaks are
The
already
tickets in the
freaking
same
higher
row
than
are
last
now
year's
less
peaks,
than
And
half
when
of
this
what
team
I
was starting to
paid.
do a bit
38
well.
seconds.
Ticket prices
in
for the
WNBA
Fever's game
history.
against the Sky in Chicago
She was doing what she
plummeted
does
once
best,
news broke.
dropping highlights
Caitlin Clark
and breaking
breaking out.
records, grasping at straws to tear her down. They're getting more desperate. Let's get into everything that happened. But first, like this
The
video's
Fever's
matchup
matchup
against the
to see her
Liberty peaked at
return
nearly
and drop a W
3.3
in the
million
comments.
viewers.
If you watch
That
the
came
game
on the
like I
heels
did.
of which averaged
Because this wasn't
2.7
just
million
an
viewers,
ordinary
game.
the most
we all
watched
know.
WNBA regular season game since 2000. In other words, the Caitlin Clark effect was alive and
WNBA
well.
like, what?
And the wildest part? The Fever weren't exactly lighting it up.
1 second
The
left.
Fever went 2 and 3 without her, including a humbling brilliant move, right? How
The WNBA
they
were
salaries.
losing.
Let's
The
blow
run
and
and
gun
against the
team
Sky
that
made
everyone
it look
fell
like
in
they
love
were a
with,
modest
the
10
one
or
fans
15%.
expected to see.
People paid
That win
hundreds of
said more
dollars
about the
EMV
Sky being
on
a
Tuesday
dumpster
morning.
fire than the Fever
here's the
being
truth.
ready to take over. If the Fever aren't playing fun, and Caitlin,
It's not just
she was
Indiana that
productive,
suffers.
dangerous,
The entire league
still
takes
pulling
the
off
hit.
highlights.
And
But
man,
anyone paying attention
did they
could
ever
tell she
feel it.
wasn't quite right.
You know, she
Okay,
better
not that
get
bad,
back
but
soon
the
because
explosiveness
out of
was
sight,
dull.
out of mind.
Ratings imploded faster than matters for what
submarine,
happens next, dropping over 50%. So when the news broke that she'd be out at least 2 weeks and 4 games minimum, fans were obviously concerned. With highlight reels,
If
it was
LeBron
filled
was
with
out,
compilations of Angel
We've
Reese
got this.
missing layups,
The new
and
vets will
Dijon
hold down the
Carrington
fort.
trying to fill the chaos void left by
now
Kennedy
you're just
Carter.
not taking the WNBA as a business. You're not seeing it as a business.
Needs to grow. We're tuning out because without Caitlin, the
Are
energy,
we really going to
the
talk
excitement,
about respecting the
and
WNBA
the product
as a
just
business?
wasn't there. And it's not as if the casual fans had been treated well to begin with.
the media, I felt like,
At least not
mishandled
until
so
Caitlin
many
Clark showed.
things
This
with
was
the
Sophie
WNBA
Cunningham
last
after
season,
their
and
loss to the
specifically with
Mystics.
Caitlin Clark and her fan base. And that's one thing when you start
it's
thinking
important
about
to
how
remember
many
what she
people
said,
stopped
because
watching when
looking
Caitlin
back,
Clark got injured. A lot of people stopped
fans were
watching
hoping
because
for a
they
quick
are
turnaround. They
boycotting
didn't
the
get it.
WNBA.
After
They
the
don't
Mystics
want
loss.
to give viewership to any other teams or any other players, whether they like other players on the team or not, because of how the media
fuel
and
it.
the league itself
protect
has
it.
handled
You
Caitlin
build
Clark.
around stuff like their loss to the Sun, a team that started the season, was humbling and made fans and analysts question everything. Investigation based on unsubstantiated rumors. In that same game, the Fever lost obvious vitriol to injury toward Fever Both
players.
of Caitlin Clark's backups gone, just like
Months
that.
of media
Suddenly,
and
the
players
depth chart
trashing
was
those
momentum
same
only
fans.
built from there, accusing
The new fans are sucking the f***ing
Wide
life
open.
out of the
And this one?
WNBA right now.
relief from the Fever and the league. And the timing and stage couldn't have been better. Harry McDonald, the hardship signing nobody saw coming. One that isn't often reported on, but tells a big part of the story. She brought the energy.
On Fever games dropped as much as
Most
50%
importantly,
last
she ignited
week
the
at
offense.
sportsbooks. When star guard Caitlin Clark was out,
the clock expired.
the amount wagered on the
handing
Fever's
the
2
Liberty
games
a
last year at
90 to
Caesar
88
Sportsbook
win. She
was
should be
roughly
part of this
half
team's
as much
future.
as the team's first 4 games of the season.
Betting since Caitlin Clark's injury has dropped like a rock, so now she was returning. The Fever started to find their way. First, they got revenge on the Mystics, and everyone flipping
had
the
the
script
same
from
two
that
questions.
earlier loss.
How would she
and then
look,
came the
and
big
just
one.
how much
the
could she
highly
elevate this
anticipated
team the
rematch
moment
against
she
the
stepped
Chicago
back on the
Sky
court?
in front of a crowd of nearly 20,000 fans. And the Fever delivered a statement. They didn't just win, they obliterated them. Despite Caitlin scoring and making some great passes, the Fever were down big early.
2 points in 2 games.
Now sure, beating the Sky is basically breathing at this point, but this one was different. Because the
completely
Fever
fixed
did it
Clark's
without
quad
Caitlin
injury.
Clark, without Sophie Cunningham,
Cunningham is
and
down
without their head
behind
coach,
the play.
Stephanie White.
But
And
they
even though it
got
wasn't their
Caitlin
cleanest
Clark.
game,
2 players
it
with
was still an
incredible-
absolute drubbing.
She's back!
She stepped up and drilled 3 deep three-pointers
Kelsey
in a row.
Mitchell has
each
snapped
one
out
more
of her early
confident
season
and
slump
more electric
and is
than
starting
the
to look
last.
like her old
It
self
completely
again.
transformed the
Aaliyah
game.
Boston
flipped
continues
the
to be a
momentum,
dominant force.
and set the tone. Straight up lethal from 3. It
wasn't
and
just
making
a
a
scoring
real
run.
case for
It
most
was a
improved
statement.
player, and it sent the sports world into a frenzy.
3 threes in 38
And for these
seconds
reasons
in the
alone,
first half. Caitlin Clark hit 3 low
better
goal
than they would have
bombs,
been had she
by
never.
the way. 3 low
Alone
goal
should have Fever fans
bombs
fired up.
in 38
But if you're a
seconds.
Caitlin
This
Clark
was
fan,
the
there's
Caitlin
something
Clark
else.
we
This injury
all
didn't